The Cape to Cape track is an iconic 125-kilometre coastal hike in the far southwest of Western Australia. It showcases a vast array of long sandy beaches, beautiful blue water, and stunning coastal wildflowers, wildlife, and vegetation. The track runs between the Cape Naturalist and Cape Luan lighthouses, looking out to the Indian Ocean, and is typically walked over 6 to 8 days. For myself and my beautiful mum, who I was very excited to have joining me, this would be a 7-day unsupported southbound hike and a great adventure of WA's coastline. Day 1. Heading up to Cape Naturalist at the northern end of the trail, we touched the lighthouse to officially start our hike and headed off for a short but beautiful day. Moving away from the lighthouse precinct, straight onto boardwalk and passing beaches where we spotted whales and dolphins almost straight away. The weather was hot, as to be expected in Western Australia, but just beautiful as we passed Sugarloaf Rock and its lookout to officially sign into the trail. Before moving over the headlands and onto a great afternoon of beachside walking. The views here were just unreal. Spotting urchins and lizards, along with wildflowers, which were a pretty major reason for why we had wanted to hike in spring. Ending the day, we stopped at Mount Duckworth, the first of the track's Cape to Cape campsites. Set up for the night and had a nice little dinner to finish, camping amongst the trees just back from the ocean. Day 2. Waking up at Mount Duckworth campsite, we had a little bit of rain overnight. Thankfully, it was just enough to wet the tent, but not enough to dampen our spirits as we started out for the day. Heading out, we were once again greeted by beautiful ocean views almost straight away, and of course, more beautiful wildlife along the trail. The morning's walk then headed down onto the beach, along some popular surf coast, and through Yallingup, the first of a number of gorgeous little towns on the trail. With more soft sand and a sprinkle of rain to cool us down, we headed across Smith's Beach and, with grey skies, moved past rocky outcrops, wildflowers, and trail walking around to our next coastal section. Much like yesterday, we had more wildflowers and headland walking, covering about 23 or 4 kilometres for the day. We crossed our first tiny little inlet, which thankfully was no problem at this warmer time of year, stopped off at Quinnanup Falls, and even found this adorable little western bearded dragon. All before finishing the day with hills covered in kangaroos as we walked back off the coast and into the Moses Rocks campsite. This was a beautiful little spot right in the trees, just a short walk to a stunning open ocean sunset, and yet another perfect spot to sit back, relax, and enjoy dinner on the trail. Day 3. Today we plan to cover about 20 kilometres of new coastline through to Ellenbrook campsite. Starting off the day after a lovely night by the ocean at Moses Rocks, we had breakfast with a few other campers about, and then set out with overcast skies, perfect for a day of walking. The morning's trail was quite sandy, again spotting dolphins almost straight away. We headed down onto the beach and spotted a legless lizard, before moving again up through vegetation, over stairs winding around coastal paths, and of course stopping at a number of points to just simply enjoy the views. The afternoon's walk was filled with more wildlife, from lizards like this little cutie to snakes who I'm sure were just trying to soak up a bit of sun on the trail. Thankfully, they weren't too interested in us, so we kept going on some rocky sections past wildflowers and over the cliff to stop briefly at Gracetown to enjoy the beaches and, of course, have a little treat before we headed back onto the track. Our final section was absolutely alive with wildflowers and just stunning as we made our way up through Ellenbrook, followed the creek and vegetation inland, and finished the day at the Ellenbrook campsite with a number of beautiful ladies who we had met on trail that day. After spending a lovely night inland in the trees at Ellenbrook, we had breakfast and packed up for day 4, ready to make our way back to the beach. Our hike started straight uphill, but with a lovely short day planned, we knew we were in for a good one. Having met and camped with a few other ladies at Ellenbrook last night, we actually ended up meeting back up on trail and decided to walk a lot of the day together. It was quite a hot one with a fair bit of beach walking, so I think it was nice for all of us just to move at a bit of a slower pace. That said, we still managed to move over headlands and cover some beautiful beaches, as well as finding a pair of adorable little shinglebacks hanging out together. We scrambled over rocks, searched through rock pools, and honestly just had stunning clear water for the day, before making it through to the Margaret River rivermouth and stopping all together on the ocean for lunch. Going our separate ways, we had a little more beach walking before making our way into our next beach town, Prevelly. Again, this is a really lovely spot right on the water, only about 10 minutes drive out of Margaret River, and gave us a chance just to sightsee, relax, have a good shower, and treat ourselves to some of the best burgers we've had in WA. We finished the night with an ocean sunset, again something we absolutely love so much over here, and definitely felt spoiled having made the most of being in town before jumping back on the trail in the morning. Day 5. After a short relaxing one yesterday, we were ready this morning to head out from Prevelly for another hot day. We left town and again started pretty much straight uphill. Had great views of the area and thankfully a bit of much needed shade as we headed back into the trees and inland. This was quite a different section of the walk to what we had previously done, not being directly on the ocean. We saw a few goannas here which look a little different to what we have at home on the east coast. They were obviously quite familiar with people in the area and would walk almost right alongside us at this point. Of course, being a coastal walk, we did start making our way back to the ocean and came out to some beautiful views. Making our way back down to a creek and finding the trail had been cleared. We crossed over this beautiful little bridge, making the most of the shade and out onto the dunes, heading for our next long stretch of beach walking. It was super windy and hot out here for this long stretch, but beautiful and had the beach almost completely to ourselves. We stopped briefly for lunch before jumping over onto Redgate Beach, yet another beautiful one with crystal clear water, then headed up over the headland, making our way towards the campground for the night, not of course before spotting this snake who wanted to check us out, some cockatoos feeding by the ocean, and passing through caves which are such a defining feature for the area. A few more stunning beaches, and once again we headed off the coast and just into Conto's campground to spend the night. We had our section of the campground completely to ourselves and a trail dinner once again before heading into the tent. Day 6. We had a beautiful morning this morning at Conto's campground with lots of wildlife and kangaroos around before packing up and making our way onto the trail for our longest day of the walk. The sun was shining, and with packs getting a little bit lighter, now carrying less food, we decided we wanted to cover about 30 kilometers. The trail for the morning starts inland before heading back to the ocean and is a really awesome section to check out wildflowers and forest country. It was also obviously affected by fire, but is recovering really well, leaving behind some beautiful little spots to explore. We saw this healthy looking little python, found emu feathers but unfortunately no emus, and carried on through and over trees to make our way back onto the coast and onto one of the prettiest beaches yet. The watercolour coming out here was absolutely insane, so we made sure to take our time really enjoying the water and looking for wildlife. A few more kilometres of beach walking and we made it into Hamlin Bay. There's not much here other than a caravan park and a couple of little lookouts and swimming spots, but it is super cute. And a great spot to take a break before heading back out through the coastal vegetation. Past a little old lighthouse, and through Cozy Corner for some rock and cliff walking for the afternoon. The last stretch of the day then finishes on Deep Dean Beach. Here we saw some beautiful bird life and headed off the dunes to camp for the night. Happy to take off the sandy shoes, we pitched the tent and spent one last cozy night on trail, ready to finish our walk tomorrow. Day 7. Our final day on trail certainly shaped up to be a pretty good one. After spending the night at Deep Dean campsite, we only have about 16 kilometres to go to reach the Cape Luan Lighthouse and finish our hike. Back on Deep Dean Beach, we had a very long section of beach walking for the morning. Thankfully, however, we did manage to pick the tides and had a lot of hard sand to make the walk a hell of a lot easier underfoot. Some pretty views, and even prettier water leading us down the coast. After finishing the beach walk around some rocks, we headed up into the dunes for a few kilometres of headland walking. The soft sand and the sun here were killer, but quickly led onto roads and trails, thankfully with a few trees for shade. We spotted this little cutie hanging out amongst the leaves, had 1 million flies unfortunately today, and of course a few quick snack stops along the way. The final stretch of our walk gave beautiful views of the lighthouse and led us down around the coast past the trail book. Over more rocks where we had to brave one final cheeky little swim. And finally up to the lighthouse precinct. We walked through the cafe and cottages, got just about blown away by the wind, and finally touched the lighthouse, finishing our hike to very happy walkers. For us, the Cape to Cape track was an awesome shared experience and a trail we would both recommend, particularly if you have the opportunity to walk through the wildflower season. We ended our journey rescuing a snake, getting a lift with a lovely couple we'd met on trail to town, camping, catching a bus, and ultimately hitchhiking our way back to Cape Naturalist to get our vehicle and top off what was already a pretty awesome adventure. Thank you to all who joined us for this beautiful hike, and we can't wait to see what's in store for us next.